she brought the second tray into the hall, I think she looked along the passage and saw him. So she put the tray down and went out to meet him. She had to die. He couldn't risk her talking. And then the peg to fit with the rhyme. The nearest he could get to a dicky bird that pecked off her nose.
So if you're suggesting that Albert Evans wanted revenge for this whole Blackbird mine business, then you must believe that it was Mrs. Mackenzie's son behind all this. That he didn't die at Dunkirk after all.
Oh, no, I'm not suggesting that for a minute. Don't you see, Inspector, all this Blackbird business is a complete distraction. It was used by someone who'd heard about the Blackbirds to point the finger of suspicion at the Mackenzies.
Then, who is the killer, Miss Marple?
Someone quite sane, brilliant and unscrupulous, and done, of course, for money.
Percival.
No, not Percival. Lance. You all right, Inspector? Lance came home in the summer to see his father. I don't believe for a moment that his father sent for him. Unless, of course, you have actual evidence.
No, only a letter that Lance is supposed to have written to his father afterwards, which he could easily have slipped into his papers the day he arrived.
He probably attempted a reconciliation, but his father would have none of it. You see, Lance is very much in love with Pat, but the small pittance he was living on wasn't enough for the life he thought they should have together. When he was here, he must have heard about the Blackbirds and jumped to the conclusion that Mackenzie's daughter was established in the house. A perfect scapegoat for murder, because murder it would have to be. He feared that by the time his father died, the business would have completely collapsed. Perhaps his father's name being Rex suggested the idea of the nursery rhyme. Then he could dispose of Adele too and save the firm £100,000. But to make the rhyme work, they had to be the maid in the garden hanging out the clothes, an innocent accomplice whom he could silence before she could talk, and thus give him a genuine alibi for the first murder. After strangling Gladys, he rang the bell and joined family for tea.
It's so good to see you.
Little Ellie.
Oh, trusty crumpet!
He went to see Mrs. Crump and then slipped back into the sitting room where he found Adele alone.
Your tea.
Oh, thank you, love. You're very well trained, aren't you?
But his share of the business isn't worth 3 murders.
I would agree, Inspector. If it's true, the Blackbird mine is worthless.
A mine on the west coast of Africa.
But what if he'd been deliberately misleading us? What if the Blackbird mine was on the east coast of Africa, not west? East Africa, where uranium deposits have recently been discovered, and where Lance has been living these past several years. And just suppose the deposits are on the site of the old Blackbird mine. Young Lancelot could make a killing.
It's all pure assumption.
But you know it's right, don't you?
I suppose I do.
So do I. It was Pat drew my attention to him. He's the kind that always marries a bad lot.
How on earth am I going to be able to prove it?
Oh, you'll prove it all right, Inspector. You're a very clever man. I have no doubt you'll find the evidence.
And this still doesn't explain the Ruby Mackenzie business.
If you don't mind my saying so, you've been barking up the wrong tree. I was talking to your mother a few days ago.
She's very angry with me, isn't she? Oh, poor Mummy. She's so devoted to Daddy.
And she brought you up swearing to avenge his death.
She made us swear on the Bible that one day we'd kill Rex Fortescue. When I started training as a nurse, I came to realize her mental balance wasn't all that it should be.
You must have felt revengeful, though.
Well, of course I did. When a friend of mine came to nurse his son, I got her to leave and took her place. I don't know exactly what I meant to do. But Percy got fond of me, asked me to marry him. I thought that a far more sensible revenge than anything else. To marry his oldest son and then get back the money he swindled Daddy out of.
Did you plant the blackbirds?
Silly of me, really. But he was such a horrid man. It gave him quite a fright. He's absolutely furious. But I didn't do anything else. Really, I didn't.
Tell me, Mrs. Fortescue, have you given Miss Dove any money lately?
Oh.
I told her that you'd accused me of being Ruby Mackenzie and said that if she gave me £500, I'd let you go on thinking that. I told her that if you knew she was Ruby, she'd be your prime suspect. It wasn't exactly blackmail, I was just doing her a favour.
Thank you, Miss Dove.
This is all very annoying. Particularly hard up at the moment.
You'll be looking for another job, I suppose.
Yes, this one hasn't quite gone according to plan.
Unlike your other jobs.
My past is quite blameless, I assure you.
A curious coincidence, though, that in your last 3 posts, there have happened to be robberies a couple of months after your departure.
Coincidences do happen, Inspector.
Yes, but they mustn't happen too often. How on earth did you know about the money?
Oh, just a stab in the dark.
I do wish you weren't going.
I finished what I came to do. It hasn't been altogether pleasant, but it is important that wickedness shouldn't triumph.
I don't understand.
No, my dear, but perhaps one day you will. If anything ever goes wrong in your life, you won't despair, will you?
Oh, dear Miss Marple, you're starting to worry me.
You won't, will you?
But how could I despair with Lance at my side? We're going back to Keener, you know, as soon as everything's cleared up. Oh, I can't wait.
So glad to see you home, miss.
I'm glad to be home, Tilly.
And haven't broken nothing since you went, honest. Here's your letters. Ooh. Thank you, Tilly. There's one as went to Daisy by mistake. They've been away and only sent it round today. So they hoped it weren't important. I'll just put your things away.
Dear Madam, I hope as you'll forgive me writing this, but I really don't know what to do. You'll have seen the newspapers. It was murder, they say, but I'd never do anything wicked, and I know Albert wouldn't either. We met last summer and was going to be married, only Bert had been done out of his rights by this Mr. Fortescue. But Bert had a friend who works in a place where they make these new drugs, and there's what they call a truth drug. Oh, madam, I don't know what to do. If you could only come here and help me. I didn't mean anything wrong, and Bert didn't either. I'm enclosing a snap of Bert and me. Bert doesn't know I've got it. He hates being snapped. But you can see, madam, what a nice boy he is.
Well, an emotionally charged and incredibly moving fact-based drama about the passengers on board the doomed flight that was the 4th terrorist attack plane on September the 11th, 2001. United 93 is after the news at 10:15.